go through the contents for part 12. And in part 12 of the Metroidvania series, what's going on is it's a reorganization of the UI codes that we have on the project. So what we have currently around the project, we have different sets of scripts for the main menu, as well as for the individual levels themselves. So in the individual levels themselves, we have a canvas right here, and then we have a scene fader plus a whole bunch of codes. And on the main menu is the same thing. So a couple of issues. I have a couple of issues that with the way that the code is organized. Firstly, all of the scripts are spread over multiple files, which makes everything very disjointed. So the main menu is managed by a completely different set of scripts than the level scenes. So the scripts are all spread over. There is a script, fade UI. This is responsible for fading things in and out. We have the menu fade controller script, which is responsible for transitioning between all the different menus in the main menu scene. And then we have also the scene fader, which is responsible for the big black box that you see, but it's on the scenes themselves. We have a scene fader in every scene, and that's responsible for the fading in and fading out. So having all of these functionalities spread across different scripts makes it very difficult to manage in the long run, because you have these functionalities which are supposed to be related, right, spread over different scripts. So if you were to say take a break from this project for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and you come back to it, you may forget how these scripts work just because they are not organized in an intuitive way. So in this part, we are going to be fixing this by introducing a UI script that works for everything. So instead of having our UI scripts spread over, say, 3 or 4 files, I think it's three or four files, right? A couple of files, all right? We have everything in one file. And the other thing, the UI script that we have, the new UI script that will do is, another thing that the new UI script will do is it will remove the need for the scene fader that we have right here. Because right now, if you want to modify a UI, you have to remove the scene fader somehow, because it's a barrier, right? So we are going to, in our new UI script, handle the scene fading using code instead of having an explicit game object. And we're also going to automate a lot of things, because in all of our UI elements, right, you will find that we have buttons, and for every scene that we have right now, right, for every new scene that we have, we will have to manually assign the button actions for resume, for quit to main menu, and for the dev screen as well. And this is really suboptimal, right? Because say if you were to build your own Metroidvania, you're gonna have hundreds of scenes, and if you have to manually assign each of the buttons, it's gonna give you a lot of work. So this recode is aimed at fixing all of these 3 things. So what is the script that will replace all of our UI scripts? Let's start from the main menu first. We're gonna apply this new script on the main menu first, and then after that we will move on and we will apply them to the Cave 1, Cave 2, and Cave 3 scenes. So there are going to be some new features introduced, but this is more because we are recoding an existing feature and making it more flexible. So there won't be any additional content that we'll be creating per se. We are redesigning an existing framework so that in the future, this will work for, in the next part, it will work for our pickup system, and then this will blend very nicely into our new save system as well, which is in the pipeline for 2025. Just checking that my mic is working. Donna, I'll reply to you in a while, right? Because I'm recording for the part 12 video. So whatever's here is gonna be in the part 12 video. So to replace all of our old scripts, we have a new script called UI screen. And this UI screen script is going to be responsible for all of our UI elements moving forward. It's replacing a couple of scripts, the scripts that I just mentioned. So for this new UI script, I'm going to be putting it inside a folder called UI. All of our UI scripts are going to this UI folder. And I'll briefly explain what this new UI screen script is supposed to do for us. So what we have here is a script that perhaps it's easier for me to explain if I were to just attach the script as a component and show you. So let's apply this to the main menu script first. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is in the main menu scene, right? Let's remove the image component right here. This is the fader. So this is the scene fader, this is the scene fader, but it's for the main menu scene. So I'm gonna remove this, and instead in its place, what's gonna take over is you will see these fade UI scripts as well on the main menu, the options menu, and the credits menu. So all of these will be replaced by a UI screen script. So the main menu will have a UI screen script. The options menu will have a unique UI screen script for it as well, which I will get to in a while. And the credits menu, same thing. Alright, so we're going to replace the fade UI script here with the UI screen script here. And the first thing you'll notice is that there are a couple of configurable settings over here. I will go through what each of these settings are. So firstly, the UI screen script has a scene entrance property, and let me just remove the fade UI script. What this does is this gives you the option to control how the fade in happens. So then we no longer need the black box to work as the scene fader, because we have a scene entrance property right here. And what happens is that the scene entrance is basically a script that manually codes a custom game object to appear on our canvas whenever we have whenever we set a scene entrance for it. So if we set this to color fade, for example, then automatically the script will create a new canvas object that covers the entire screen and handles the fading for us like this. Yeah. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we have fade time and fade color. This allows us to control the color of the fader. So let's say if I were to change the fade color to yellow, you will get a yellow fade in instead, like this. So we have a couple of fade options. One of them is color fade, the other one is fade. So fade, basically, instead of fading in via color, it will fade the entire scene in like this. Alright, so, and then we also have color fade and fade, which does a similar thing, except that it does a color fade and then it does a fade after that, like this. Yeah, so there are a couple of options, and the UI screen is basically meant to be attached to all of the UI components that we want to animate, either with a color fader or with having the UI element fade in or fade out. We can use the UI screen for this. So notice that this replaces the fade UI script. This crossfade property and this update frequency property, I will explain more later, as well as timescale. Actually, update frequency, I can explain it now. So update frequency basically affects how smooth the animation is. And if you are running your game on a slower device, you can always increase this value to make the animation less intensive performance-wise, but of course snappier as well. See that? So if I increase the update frequency, then this causes the fading to not be as sharp. So if your device can handle it, I recommend you just leave it at its default value. So there are a couple of functions inside UI screen. So all the properties are right here in the script. There are a couple of functions inside here that handle a variety of things. I just want to draw your attention to a couple of them. Firstly, we have a wake function. All of these functions, most of them are marked with virtual because later on we will be overriding some of them with subclasses. So over here we have the wake function, which basically does the scene entrance for us. The most important functions that you will find in the UI screen, right, are the fade, fade to, and color fade and fade functions, because these are functions that, so if you recall the fade UI, what it does is that it controls the canvas group, right, like this. So the UI screen does the same thing. So you will find the UI screen has actually a require component right here. It also has a disallow multiple component so that you are not able to attach multiple UI screen scripts onto your component like this, right? That's because we have a disallow multiple component right here. We have a require component here, which means that you have to have a UI screen together with canvas group, because this is what the fading of the UI screen uses to animate the entire UI. So we have three functions here. We have fade, fade to, and we have color fade and fade. Color fade and fade is just a combination of these two. All right, fade is basically controlling the transparency right here, fading this, and then color fade is, as you have seen, using the scene fader, creating a new scene fader whenever you have a fader. So the main function of the UI screen is to do that. There are also activate and deactivate functions that exist, and these are there for us to attach to buttons. So later on, when we want to switch screens in the main menu, we'll be using the activate and deactivate functions on our UI screen to turn on and turn off different screens. So this will cause the UI screens to work a little differently than our fade UI, but in the long run, it's going to make the whole process of handling our UI much more intuitive. We also have a static fade function that will be used by our scene transition scripts later on, which I will elaborate on when we get onto the individual scenes themselves. And finally, we have a couple of load scene functions as well. These are because in the menu fade controller, sorry, not the menu fade controller, it's the fade UI controller. In our fade UI controller, we have a function that allows us to load scenes. Nope, not this one as well. I think it's the scene fader, right? My bad. It's the scene fader. Where is the scene fader? Right here. So the scene fader has a function that allows us to fade out and load the scene, and this is replicated over in the UI screen as well. So as you can see, we are combining scripts from we're combining multiple scripts into one, and having one script handle all of them. So whether you are in the web level scenes or whether in the main menu scene, once you get used to the UI screen, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to create new UI elements in your project. So next thing I want to do, right, is we're going to find all of the scripts that we will be combining into one, and we will be marking them as obsolete. We are not going to destroy these scripts right away. The reason for that is because we don't want to break our codes, right? So the other script we're going to replace one last script, right, because all of the scripts are already listed above. So we're going to replace these four scripts: menu fade controller, fade UI, scene fader, and UI audio. So for all of these scripts, I'm just gonna mark them as system obsolete. So the reason why we mark them as such is because after you do that, whenever you try and use these scripts, Unity reminds you that these scripts are obsoleted and you should remove them. Let me show this to you. So for example, the UI audio, right? If I obsolete it, you will get this little notification right here. Let me just move the inspector out so that the obsolete notification can be seen. Let me just close everything. Right, otherwise my face is blocking. So if you have an obsolete script and you try and use it, you get this little warning right here that says this component has been marked as obsolete, and it's really important for us to use this to remind ourselves whenever we are using scripts that are deprecated or obsolete. And the reason why I don't remove these scripts outright is because if I do that, this will cause errors in our project. If we want to slowly transition out, we want to introduce our new scripts first and then remove these old scripts after we have successfully replaced all of the old components. All right, so this UI audio here, I'm just gonna leave it first. Later we replace it, but let's move on to our components here and just add a UI screen to main menu and the credits menu. So for the credits menu, same thing, you want to remove the fade UI and just add a UI screen component as well. So the scene entrance for the credits menu will be none because only the main menu is there, right? When we first start the screen, so only the main menu handles the scene entrance. The credits menu, everything else is the same except that you want to set the canvas group right here to have an alpha of 1 and make it interactable and blocks raycast. Same thing is to be done with the options menu, but we will not be using the UI screen script. Okay, so for the options menu, you'll notice that it's handled by both a fade UI as well as the settings menu. And the settings menu is there because it handles the setting of the quality and all that stuff. So let me just show you the options menu, what it does. All right, so options menu has all of these. Let me just disable the other screens temporarily. Options menu has these 3 settings that you can play around with, right? So this script is there to manage these 3 settings. So we absolutely need this script, but we also want to fold it into our UI screen system. So what's going to happen is that for the settings menu, I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this UI menu settings. The reason why I put UI in front is so that we know that this is a UI script. So organizationally, it makes a little bit more sense. Make sure to right click and do rename. Don't just change the name over here, because if you do this from the Visual Studio Editor, then this automatically changes all your other scripts to reflect the new name as well. So it saves you a lot of work. I'm gonna also, this renames the file as well, by the way. And after a bit of loading, this will change the name of the script. I'm just going to move this script right here into the UI folder so that it's together with the UI screen. Second thing I'm going to do is to replace once the script is changed, I'm also going to replace this with UI screen, because so what this does is called parenting, and the reason why I'm parenting UI menu settings to UI screen is because I want to inherit all of the different functionalities that the UI screen has. Because UI menu settings is a UI screen as well, right? It's just a slightly different kind of UI screen. So by inheriting UI screen like this, I get all the functions right here. I can use all the functions here, as well as all the variables right here. So what will happen is that instead of having to attach the UI screen script onto the options menu, I subclass the existing script, and basically I get a UI screen right here, right, with an extra variable right here, because the UI menu settings has a variable here like this as well. So to help us distinguish the properties, I'm also going to add a new header like this that says menu settings. I think that's what is on the blog as well, right? Alright, so I'm just adding a little header here, and because these 2 namespaces not required, I'm removing them as well. And finally, we have a quit function that I removed together with the start and update. Start and update because it doesn't do anything. Quit function because I've moved the quit function into the UI screen script, and the reason is because we want this to be accessible to all our buttons, not just in the menu setting. So it doesn't make sense that whenever we want to quit the game, we have to add a UI menu setting script, because it's not always relevant, right? So then we are just shifting the function around. So now our UI menu settings is a UI screen as well. So then we can play around with the settings right here. Again, you want to make sure that for your options menu, the alpha is set to 1, interactable and blocks raycast is both ticked as well. So once you have all of these things set up, you can deactivate options menu and the credits menu and go back to the main menu. Just another reminder, make sure that your canvas group here has alpha set to 1 and the interactable and blocks raycast checkboxes are both checked, because the UI screen works a little differently from the rest of from the fade UI that we had before. Alright, so now we have the UI screen for all of our menus. We can now go to our buttons and start arming our buttons to do different things. The first thing I want to do is remove all the sound functions, because we will code a more editor friendly way of assigning sounds later on, alright, right after we get the menu screens to work. So for the start button, okay, we will go to the main menu here. So all of the functionalities that we need can be done using the UI screen component right here. So just attach, because the UI screen is on the main menu, right? We can just go to UI screen here, and then we can just do a load scene. Where is load scene? We have deactivate. We don't have a load scene here. What's going on? I forget to save. Load scene is right here, isn't it? Okay, we have a little bit of a problem here. Let me just edit the post, because the UI screen script has a small issue. So if we have optional variable here, it doesn't work. So this means I'll need a load scene function here as well. So if you're editing the video, just remove this part, because clearly I missed this one out. So we need another version of the load scene as well, but without the fade duration here. Scene boot index. And here we have load scene as well. Scene name. So why am I creating versions of these functions with single arguments? Is so that I can use these functions in the on-click actions here. So now I should have the load scene options right here. Let me just add a comment here. So these single argument versions of the load functions, so that things are able to So with load scene, we have two different options. Before I forget, let me just add them into the blog as well. So we have these two load scene functions, so that these spaces are a little better. This has got to be the hardest part to do, man, because I've actually recorded this a few times, and every time I record it, I find an error. I thought that I wouldn't have any more errors just because of how many times I went through this part of the project already. Okay, so let's move on. So for each of your buttons, we have to assign a button action, and all of these actions are actually functions that you can use in that you can activate from the UI screen. So for the start function right here, let's assign main menu to the on click action, and then let's go to UI screen and load scene. So you can either use the integer version or the string version, whichever you prefer. So if you want to use the string version, then you can just select load scene here straight. My face is blocking, right? Let me just redo this again just to make sure that it's recorded. Assign main menu over here. Go to UI screen and load scene. You can choose either integer or string. It's up to you. Depends on how you prefer to refer to your scenes. And then after that, if you select the string one, you got to type in the name of the scene. Otherwise, if you select the integer version, then you've got to specify the build index, which is whatever number the first scene of the game is. I'm just gonna stick with the older, with how the project was set up, and use the cave one right here. And that does it for the start button. For the options button, we have a few more things. Okay, again, you remove all the sounds right here, and now we only need one action for the options button, options menu. So make sure that you assign options menu right here. It's not the main menu, right? Options menu, and then you have activate under UI menu settings, and then you have activate right here. And just make sure to check this box as well, because what this box is if you look at the activate function right here, right? Activate function takes one argument. It takes an argument that is called exclusive. So what happens when you check the box when exclusive is true is before the UI screen activates, it disables all other UI screens first. So by checking this button, it makes sure that when this options screen right here is turned on, it turns off all the other screens. So we do the same thing for credits as well. We remove the sound. We remove the event trigger right here as well. And for the button itself, we remove all the other actions, assign credits menu here, go to UI screen, and again, we activate the screen and check the box over here. All right, and for the quit button, same deal, you remove all the sounds and go to main menu, and from main menu here, you can go to UI screen, quit. So this assigns the actions for all 4 buttons we have on the screen so far. For the options menu, we do the same thing. We have to find the back button. So the options menu has a back button that we have to do. The same tool, we remove all the sounds. We remove the event trigger as well. And then we remove the, we go to main menu and then we do activate like this. Right, we check the box here. And then this links the back button back to main menu. And credits menu, again, same deal. We find the back button inside. And we do the same thing. Right, so by now you should be pretty familiar with the actions that you have to perform. Remove all the sounds and activate the screen. So once we have all of that done, when you play the game, you should have all your screens connected very seamlessly. All right, for start, we'll load the main menu scene. So if you want to change the settings for how the menus fade, there are 2 settings that you have to play around with. Number 1 is fade time right here. If you decrease the fade time, then the fades will occur faster. But do note that the fade time is controlled by the scene that you are moving into. So if you set fade time for the UI menu settings to 1, when you go to the options menu, it takes 1 second to do that. It's only when you go back that the 0.5 here applies. So let me show you. Options menu takes longer. Go back to main menu is faster. Okay, so the fade time here controls how long the transition takes. The fade color doesn't really matter. The fade color only matters when you have a scene entrance. The other thing that's interesting is the crossfade right here. So if I set crossfade over here to 0.5, let me just set crossfade to 0.5 here and set the fade time to 1. And again, this applies to the main menu, right? So look at what happens when I go back to the main menu. So when I fade to the options menu, there is no crossfade. But when I fade back to the main menu, there is a little crossfade right here. See that? Okay, so this crossfade here basically allows you to control how the transitions happen. So if I go to options menu here and also set the crossfade to something like 0.5, and same thing for the credits menu, you will see now that the transitions between the screens will also have a little bit of overlap, which of course just adds to the static value of the screen, right? So now it's a lot more configurable. We don't have to go into the code. Previously, if you wanted to change these settings, we have to go into the code, right? Which is I'm not really a fan of that, because you know, we've talked in the last part of this series how when you code, you want to code modularly, right? And this is why this is why I've added all of these different attributes that you can very easily modify to configure your UI screens with a lot of ease. So now that we have all this done, we will want to also, if you look at my screen here, there is a little bit of a responsive issue, right? So previously how we fixed the responsivity of our screens was we just went to canvas, and then we went to canvas scaler, and then we just set scale with screen size, right? Obviously there are a couple of problems right here. If you see that the title gets cut off, so you just want to improve upon our setup of the main menu and for all our screens moving forward, so that it adapts at least somewhat decently to different screen sizes. I shouldn't have the title getting cut off and the black behind doing this, right? Does it make sense? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the title, firstly to the main menu right here, and for some reason the files in this project, the scale is all set to 1.1, so I'm going to change this to 1. That's the first thing. Second thing is on the title itself, the scales are all should be set to 1 as well. But what we really want to do is for all of our elements right here, right, we want to split the anchor. The anchor is this little thing over here, and want to split it correctly, right, so that the element responds appropriately when we try and resize the screen, and it never goes out of the screen. So before we make any of these changes, let's set the canvas scaler back to constant pixel size, so that we don't want this scale with screen size to mess with our proportions. And of course, whenever you find something where the scale is not 1, you set it to 1. So I'm just gonna fix the title first. So all of the techniques for all the different elements are going to be the same. We split the anchor, and then we do some configurations to the 4 attributes that we have right here to make the whole thing responsive. So the anchors are right here, and how anchors work essentially is that they control the percentage of the screen. So this basically means the anchor is at half the screen horizontally, half the screen vertically as well. And when I split the anchor, what I'm doing is I'm changing the values right here. I'm gonna use my keyboard to set these values here. Actually, I'm gonna set this to be 15% of the screen, and the ending of the anchor is going to be 85%. And for the Y direction, I'm gonna set the end to be 0.4. Sorry, the start to be 0.4 and the end to be 1, like this. And once I have all of these, notice that the anchors here, they have moved. So next thing I'm gonna do is you will find that the X, Y, and Z will have changed to left, top, right, and bottom like this. Z is still there, but the width and the height have been changed to right and bottom. I'm gonna set all of this to 0, and notice how the title here changes, right? So now, because the anchor is split, when I change the size, you see that the element also changes its own size, right? And this is what we want. So we want to apply this technique of splitting the anchor for all of our elements so that everything becomes responsive. So next thing I'm going to move on to is the start button. So for all of these elements, we are just going to have to figure out an appropriate anchor value for it. And then we will just set everything left, right, top, bottom to 0. And this will basically get everything up to speed like this. So for the buttons, right, I'm going to do the same thing, of course, left, right, top. And left, right, and top are 0, but bottom will be 10. And this is because you want to leave a little gap at the bottom between the buttons, because the buttons are going to be 40% to 50%, then 30 to 40, 20 to 30, and 10 to 20. So options right here, this will be 0.3 and 0.4. And then this will be 0.4 and 0.6, same as the previous. Again, everything is 0, but bottom I'll leave a little margin like this. And of course, the scale has been set to 1. So notice here, even though this takes up 10%, the buttons are not joined together because we leave a space of 10 pixels. So we do the same thing for the credits and the quit button as well. And now we have everything laid out like this, and everything is perfect. So one thing that you want to do for your buttons as well, right, is for each of the text elements, go into the text element inside and check auto size. Depending on whether you're using Text Mesh Pro or not, you will have to find this attribute in different places, all right, but there should be auto size option somewhere inside. Check it, and then you can set a minimum maximum for it if you wish, but this usually works just as it is, so you don't have to change it. But let's say if the text is not going below a certain size, you can reduce this, or if it's not large enough, you can increase the max as well. But I'm just going to leave it at its default values right here. Just going to apply this to all the text, and you will see that the text will fill up the box that it's contained in. And here now we have a main menu screen that is responsive, which is always great. Yeah, so now it responds appropriately to our different screen sizes like this. It's not the best. If you want to make it any better, we're gonna have to use the new Unity toolkit, UI toolkit system, which it's a lot more complex, a lot more flexible, but it's a lot more complex as well. One thing we can do if you want to make everything a little bit better is to add a little bit of margin on the sides of the text right here, because the text elements are all already have the anchor split, and you just have to set the padding if you say don't want it to go too close. Let's say if I really squeeze the screen together like this, yeah, it doesn't look very nice. So if you want to leave a little bit of padding at the sides, you can do that for your text. I'm just going to leave everything at 0 because my game is going to be on certain screen sizes only, because it's on the desktop, right? So we won't have to really account for horizontal screen layouts. But if you want to do that, then you can play around with the settings in the text here as well. Alright, so now we have to head over to our options and credit screens as well and start applying these changes to them. So for the options screen, right, let me again just disable the main menu and enable the options menu. And right here we have a couple of elements that we have to optimize for as well. The first thing I'm going to do is the back button. Same strategy. We will assign percentage positions to it, and then after that use padding to control the positioning of the buttons. All right, so everything is zeroed out, and then I'm going to set the left to 10 and the top to 10 as well, so we get a little bit of space between the back button and the edge of the screen. So for the other elements here, again, these are not, the anchors are not split, so if you were to change the size of the screen, you will get some odd behavior like this, right? So the options menu itself, check this. Okay, the scale is 1, stretch as well. So just go to graphics. I'm going to change this to graphics label, and we want to again set the anchors for it. So this will be 20% to 50%, right? Anchor is right here, and this will be 0.5 to 0.6. Sorry, 0.6, 0.7. Again, I'll zero everything, and then it gets it aligned to a certain portion of the screen, and then the graphics drop down itself, same thing. We will have to set the appropriate anchor values for it, 0.5, 0.8, and this will be 0.6, 0.7. Left to be 10, everything else 0, so that we have a little bit of margin here. The text over here is really small. If you want to fix that, you can just find the text label over here and just check auto size. Yeah, and this fixes that. And full screen label, the label itself, let's change this to full screen label. And then we have to find appropriate anchor values for it. This would be 0.2 and 0.5. This would be 45 and 55. So there's a little bit of gap between graphics and full screen. Zero everything. Checkbox, same thing. This will be 0.45 and 0.55. Same as the parent. Left is 10, everything else 0. So for the checkbox, you will notice that it's not aligned vertically. So we're gonna have to head into the checkbox as well and do some tweaks to it. So the checkbox itself, the background itself, right, has anchor that's not split. But because if we split anchor, right, it's gonna cause the box to spread across the entire width. So instead, what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna split this along the vertical axis like this, and then we're gonna go into the image itself and change the image to be a simple image like this, and then preserve aspect. And what this does is this will cause the box to be center aligned, but then it's, you know, it's not stretched. And if you want to increase the size of the box, you can just increase the width like this. And for the position X, we're gonna have to manually move it so that it's aligned like to the rest of our elements. So for each of the elements, you might have to play around with the settings available to you on the UI to get the correct visuals appearing. Check marks. The check mark, same thing as well. You can increase the size. I'm just going to increase this 30 and 30, so it's a little bit bigger. And for the volume, last but not least, the volume, let's rename the label, volume label. And same deal with the anchors. This will be 0.3, 0.4. Again, 0 everything out. And for the volume slider, we will set 0.5, 0.8, 3.4, 0, everything out like this. If you want to make the slider a little bit smaller, you can add some margins on the top. Say 5 on the top, 5 at the bottom. 5 at the bottom. This can squeeze the margins a little bit, but you have to be conservative with the values over here, because if you do this on smaller screens, the slider is going to be really small. Alright, so you want to find a value that works for all the different screen sizes. The volume slider has a handle as well. For the handle, you have to preserve aspect, same thing, and then increase the width of the handle. Alright, so that you have something that makes sense. Alright, so if you don't increase the width with the handle, it's gonna be a little bit too small. And that's about that about does it for the UI screen. I think, did I misalign anything? Because it's a little off center, looks like. No, everything is fine. So the boxes here, fine. If you find it's a little off center, you can play around with percentages a little bit, but otherwise everything looks great here now. Credit screen, last thing, you'll make responsive. Back button, same deal. And for the text itself, instead of having it cover the entire screen as it was set up here, it's actually, I would actually prefer to set boundaries for it like this, and just squeeze everything inside. And then I'll have the text auto size itself, so that it always covers up the entire container. And there we have it. All of the screens are now responsive. So regardless of what screen size it is, you shouldn't find any of the elements being cut off. Right, so to get everything working again, let's just disable our credit screen and enable the main menu, so that it's the one that comes into the screen when we first begin the game. Alright, so this almost does it, but you'll notice that we're missing the sounds that we had previously. And for the sounds, we will be introducing a new way of doing things, because right now for all the sounds, we have to manually assign them to buttons. And if you have a lot of UI elements, if you intend to create a lot of different screens in the future, this is going to be very cumbersome. And if you want to change sound effects for your game, this is also not ideal. So what we'll do is, for the sound effects, there's actually a scriptable object in this part that we'll be working on. Oh, before that, right? Okay, remember I mentioned that there was a, for all of your screens, right, you have to make sure that the canvas group of alpha and the interactable and blocks raycast is on. The reason for that is because if I were to either turn any of these off, or let's say turn alpha off, right, alpha for the options menu, what this will cause is, if I were to turn the alpha to 0, I will not be able to turn on the option screen, because the alpha over here is actually saved when the game starts as the initial value for the screen. So the initial value has to be something visible, right? Otherwise it won't happen. So for example, if I set the alpha for the option screen to 0.25 right here, this is going to be the fully visible value. So because it's 25%, right, when I go to option screen, it's only 25% visible, right? So because this value is used by the UI screen, you have to make sure that it's set to a non-zero value. And because this can cause, if you don't check the interactable and block raycast options as well, what you will get is a screen that is unclickable, which is not ideal as well here. So if you don't check all of these, it's uninteractable. So what we're going to do as well, to prevent us from spending a lot of time, say if you go off this project for a while and you forget how it works, you may misconfigure your canvas group and cause you to spend, say, a couple of hours figuring out what's wrong. So to prevent this from happening, right, I recommend that you add this editor script as well. What this editor script does, editor scripts are basically customizations to your to the inspector for certain components. So for example, here I have this editor folder inside the UI folder. I'm just going to call this UI screen editor. And what we have here is a custom script that applies to the UI screen like this. Okay, it uses Unity editor, and then there is it inherits from the editor class instead of the mono behavior class. And what it does is very simple. Again, let's just go into the component so that I can show you what it does, and then you can go through the script. Component itself, right, basically gives you warnings if you misconfigure your canvas group. So for example, if I set alpha to 0, this gets me a warning. If I don't check any one of these, this gives me one more warning. So this is just an easy way. I'm not sure if my face is covering this. Let me check. Okay, so let me just redo this part again. So if I have alpha set to 0, or if I have interactable or blocks raycast unchecked, I'll get warnings. Alright, so this is just an easy way for us to avoid us from having to deal with any issues related with the canvas group, because both of these values are related to the UI screen. Okay, same thing for the credits. So remember that the UI screen is the UI menu settings is a component that is a child of the UI screen. So it works the same as the UI screen essentially, right? So same thing, if I set alpha to 0 or do whatever here, this will create some warnings to remind me to set the canvas group properly. Alright, really important. Alright, a lot of game design is also making sure that your editor is designed well so that level design becomes easy. And this is something that our series so far has neglected to do in the project, partially because we want to cover more simple concepts first, right, before we move on to more advanced ones. But this is the editor script. Make sure the editor script is inside the editor folder, otherwise you will not be able to build your game. Alright, so make sure that you create an editor folder and put your editor scripts inside there. So this is how it works. It's just overriding this function called onInspector GUI. This allows us to create a custom inspector for it. Alright, so we just draw the usual stuff that we see in the inspector, but before that we just check if the conditions are right for us to display certain warning messages. Essentially, this is what this script does. Okay, so next thing to do is we replace the UI audio script, because right now how it works is it's just there on the canvas like this, and then we assign the actions in the UI audio onto our buttons, right? Refer to part 9 if you want to get a recap of how this UI audio script works. But basically we're replacing this because it is very manual. We can't be doing this for all our buttons, right? Right? That doesn't make that much sense if you're gonna have a lot of UI screens. So we're gonna automate the entire process, and how this is gonna happen is by scriptable object. So in the UI folder, let's create one new script called UI audio feedback config. This will be a scriptable object. And what does a scriptable object do? Let's just copy and paste the code, and then we will see what it does. Let me just demonstrate to you what a scriptable object is. I don't think we've used it in this project yet. This will be the first time that we are doing it. So a scriptable object, I'm gonna put the object into the sounds folder. Right, so once we add this script right here, it inherits from scriptable object. There are a couple of configurations on top as well. What this does for us is this creates an option for us to create a new type of object called UI audio feedback config right here. Right, so what this is, I'm just gonna name this default UI feedback. Alright, so what this does is this is just a object that contains a whole bunch of variables, right? Pointer click, pointer enter, exit, down, up, select, deselect, submit. So what these are just different sounds for our UI, and I'm gonna assign hover under pointer enter and then click under pointer click, right? So this is just like how our configurations were previously. So I'm gonna set hover to select as well, and click to submit as well. Explain this later on. Alright, so once all of these things are assigned, we are gonna update our UI screen script as well. Just a couple of small edits. Okay, we'll add a new variable here called UI audio feedback config that we will use to assign our UI elements. We have audio source as well because we need audio source to play sounds. And also we add a new function here called play audio feedback that retrieves the sound from the audio feedback config that we have in the UI screen. And then that's all there is to it. So let me just copy this new UI screen script onto the project, and then I'll show you how it looks in the inspector. So with this new update, what we have is now for all our UI screens, we have a new field over here called UI feedback with a feedback config. So this feedback config over here, right, we have just created the feedback config asset. And notice that if you want your different UI screens to have different sounds, you can create multiple copies of these UI configs. So for example, I may have options. Let's say if I want the option screen to have different feedback sounds, I can just create a separate asset like this and assign different sounds to it, and this will cause my different UI screens to play different sounds. For now, I'm just going to keep everything as the default, but I just wanted to show you the rationale behind why I've decided to do things this way. Right, so you assign the UI config over here, and you do the same thing for the options menu as well, and for all the UI screens that you want sounds on. Right, so this doesn't cause the buttons to play sounds yet, because the next thing we're going to do is to update our UI screen editor component. This is the one that handles how the editor looks like. So there's a whole bunch more codes here. So I'm just going to show you how the updated component works, because now you notice that there are two buttons right here. So this is all editor scripting, and the codes are significantly more complex than usual. But what you want to see basically is the update to, I basically updated the onInspector GUI function, and then inside here we have a check to see whether this feedback config is assigned. If it is, we create a button. If you click on the button, certain things happen. If you click on this button, certain things happen, right? So if you do not assign the UI feedback config right here, nothing appears, but if you assign this, you get two buttons right here. So whenever you want to assign sounds to your UI screen, all you got to do is just to assign the configuration and then click on add audio feedback events like this. and this will add all the sounds that are relevant onto all of your buttons, right? So in this case here, the credit screen has added sounds to the back button. The options menu, if you click on this, it has also added sounds to all of the interactable components inside of our options menu. And finally, we have of course the main menu and add audio feedback events. So whenever you click on this will select all the buttons or all the interactable elements that sounds are added to. So the sounds are added to all of them via the event trigger. So this makes the entire process of adding sounds a lot more straightforward, because otherwise, can you imagine if you had to assign sounds manually for all your buttons, and if you have like 10 different screens, right? It's gonna take a lot of time and it's gonna be a lot harder to debug. So all the work that we are doing in the editor is just to make the process of level design a lot easier, and this will be extremely important if you want to scale your game to a larger scope, right? Because you can't be manually doing everything. We have a button over here, remove audio feedback events, and this does the opposite, right? So if you ever wanna just remove all the sounds, it's possible as well, right? So you have add and you have remove. Yeah. So what this does is just assigns the play audio feedback function to the button, and then uses an event trigger, right? So then the whole process can be automated. So once you've done this for all the screens, your elements will all have sounds when you mouse over them. And when you click, you have a different sound as well. So you get the same thing for the UI screen as for the options menu as well. And if you don't want this sound to appear for, say, your checkboxes and stuff, right? Then all you gotta do is just to find the elements, because it applies the sounds to all interactable elements. And if you don't want that, then you just have to remove the event trigger for the elements that you don't want sounds appearing for. Alright, so in my case here, this will be the graphics. The graphics label, the full screen checkbox, as well as the volume slider. So I only want this to apply to the buttons. Alright, so here you just do a little bit of configuration for your options menu. Credit screen is the same. Yeah, you have this for the back button. And finally, why did we also assign a sound to select and submit? Okay, this is because it's possible actually for us to, let me just remove the UI audio component before I forget. So this is because it's possible for us, okay, let's look at the event system right here. It's possible for us to assign something called first selected into the event system like this. And this will actually cause the button to become selected like this, and I can actually use the up and down arrows to select the option instead. Right, and then I can also press either spacebar or enter to select the option, but this project currently is not configured to do that. So let me just go into project settings right here and make sure the submit action over here, right, it says here return and space. So this means I can press enter or press spacebar to select my buttons. So if I do that, you will find that now when I start the game, automatically one of the options is selected, and I can use up and down to select. Looks like still not working. Why is that? Input manager, submit, return, and space, right? Oh yeah, I forgot to set the joystick axis here. Key or mouse button, set everything back to the default. If you're using the new input system, it might be a little bit different. Alright, we're gonna have a guide on how to migrate everything to the new input system in a little bit. Right, but now you have sounds appearing for your buttons. Right, so all you gotta do is assign first selected, and then the select and the submit sounds are actually all here. Right, so this whole system here is designed to work with the new input system as well. So if you're using new input system, you can still use this little convenient thing that we have over here for our UI. And that about wraps it up for the main menu screen. So the next thing we want to do is to move over to our other scenes, the cave 1, cave 2, and cave 3 scenes. Let me just make sure to save everything in the main menu that we have just done. So for the cave 1, cave 2, cave 3 scenes, we again have the same problem, a scene fader right here. And the first thing we're going to do is just jump into, because this canvas game object, right, actually is responsible for controlling everything related to UI in all of our scenes. So by modifying this prefab, I will actually fix the cave 2 and cave 3 scenes as well. Though I'll have to jump in to each of the individual scenes later on to change some things as well. Let's start with the canvas first. Alright, I'm going to open the canvas. First thing that's going to go is the scene fader, right? Because we're going to use the UI screen to do all the fading work instead. So I'll delete the scene fader. But deleting the scene fader actually causes a couple of problems in the game. So let's delete the scene fader, and the next thing I'm going to do is go to canvas, and we have this UI manager right here. UI audio is going to, let me just remove the UI audio component here as well. UI manager is going to be turning into a UI screen so that we can use the UI screen functionalities. There are a bunch of other changes as well. Alright, so we subclass UI screen right here. We don't need these two parts. Just zoom in a little bit. We don't need these two lines over here, and we have also subclassing this to UI screen. The scene fader goes away because we have just deleted it. We're not going to use the scene fader for fading anymore. Next thing that is important is that for the dev screen and later on for the pause screen in the game manager, we will be changing the type from game object to a UI screen. This is because, again, we can use activate, deactivate to turn it on, turn it off. Alright. The awake function is modified from private to protected override. This is because we have to call the awake function on the UI screen as well. And then these are just some logical optimizations for the UI manager, because if we destroy the game object, there's no need for us to continue the rest of the code. So just a minor optimization to make everything run a bit faster. And then we also remove activate dev screen and deactivate dev screen. This is because now we're using the UI screen activate function. Let me show you what I mean. Right, I'm just going to copy this script right here and just drop it into the UI manager. So this is updated. Let me just clean up all the spaces, and we'll start running through what these changes entail. So if you compile the script, you will see a couple of errors. This is because we've replaced a couple of functions inside the UI manager. So we're going to have to go into each of these individual scripts right here and just make a couple of changes. For the player controller, let me just show you in the project itself. For the player controller, okay, if you go to the console and just double click on errors, you can find where the error is. So because we've replaced the way the dev screen works, we can now just access dev screen like this and then do a dot activate to turn on the dev screen. And then we don't need the coroutine here because the activate function itself starts coroutine. For the game manager, there are a couple more changes that are more complex, but the first change is again the dev screen. We just have to, this is deactivate, right? So we have to deactivate to replace the function here like this and remove the coroutine. A couple more changes to the game manager though, because we will also make some optimizations. First, there's this little optimization here to disallow multiple components, because it's possible for you to accidentally attach more than one game manager onto a game object. So to prevent scenarios like this where you can attach multiple game managers onto one single object. It's just again, it's just a quality of life change to make sure that like silly bugs do not happen and hamper our progress. So we also changed the UI screen, the pause menu to use the UI screen. Very important. Fade time is removed because it's set inside the UI screen itself. It's not set in game manager anymore. And so for the pause screen as well, right? Because the pause screen previously used the fade UI script. So because now we're using the new UI screen script, instead of having the fade function from the scene fader, because previously the pause is the fade UI, right? So So we have to activate and deactivate it manually. So these are just some changes, and there are some minor improvements to the game manager script as well, because over here we have made I've added this logic here so that the time scale is only set if the time scale is not 0. Right? Otherwise, if the time scale is 0, the last time scale, this is the record of what time was before we paused the game. Alright, so if this was saved as 0 for because of some bug, we will not set the time scale back to 0, because this logic here is for unpausing. So if you unpause and the last time scale is 0, then we shouldn't set this to the last time scale. We should set this to 1 instead. Right, what this question mark is here is ternary. This is called a ternary operator, and this is just a shorthand. So this is basically a shorthand for if last time scale is greater than 0, then we set this to, then we set the value to time scale equals to last time scale. Else time scale equals to. So this section over here is just this, but it's in a more summarized version. Alright, so then we change the way the pause screen is turn on, turn off, because we're replacing the fade UI. And the rest of our changes in the code, right, it's just to make sure that the last time scale is never set to be 0, below 0, because you can't set the last time scale to be below 0, right? You get a little error. So we just want to add some little logical fail-safes to prevent this from happening, right? So mathf.max selects the bigger number. So if this is negative, anytime any of the values here are negative, then it will default to 0 instead. Okay, so just some quality of life improvements with Game Manager script on top of just the changes that we have. So the next thing we'll do also is to head over to the Spike script, because the Spike script, right, has it uses the UI manager, the scene fader and UI manager to fade in and fade out. So these parts will be replaced instead with, okay, let me show you. For the spikes, we will remove start and update because they're empty. This is not used, so we remove it. The main change here is the addition of these two properties right here. To control the fade color, so then you can control what color you want to fade to and how long the fade takes. So there are default values right here, and then we replace the fade functions with the new ones that are right here. So we will be using the UI screen fade to function. UI screen has a static fade to function that is there to help us again do the fade to black or fade to whatever color you want. It's static so that it can be used from anywhere, even if you don't have a UI script. Right, so we'll replace this function with a fade to function right here, and then we'll replace the wait for seconds from whatever number we set hard-coded to a custom value right here. Alright, so basically it's just the main thing is just a replacement of this function right here, which I will just copy and paste into our script. Okay, so now our spikes will have will allow us to set a fade color whenever we touch them. We have one more spike script here. This is because we have duplicates of the spike script. So we have two spikes over here, same exact logic. So I'm just going to remove select spike script and clear up some gaps in the code as well. And lastly, the last piece of code that we want to deal with is the scene transition script. So for this one right here, right, the scene transition script, same thing. We add some properties to allow us to control how long the fade time is and how the fade color is like. And then we just replace the fade out like this over here with the new fade function. Alright. And notice also that the scene transition, right, is responsible for fading the scene in. This means that for our level, we don't have to assign a scene entrance to let me just fix this issue first, and then we will talk about it a little bit further. Where's the scene transition? Scene transition. So with these changes made, all the errors should be fixed, and you should now see the code update. Alright, so what we have here, the UI manager now has all the UI screen properties as well as the UI manager properties. Alright, so we have to make sure that the dev screen over here is assigned properly. So the dev screen right here should be assigned. And I can't do that because I have to go to dev screen over here and make sure that I have the UI screen assigned like this. All right, and then pause menu, same thing. Let me just disable this, make sure that alpha is 1 and interactable and block raycast are checked. All right, so then I can add a UI screen, because otherwise, again, if I don't have these, then you see that there'll be a notification right here. Fade UI is gone. If there is fade UI on your dev screen, it should be gone as well. So once you set all of these, then you can start assigning your dev screen. So the dev screen goes here. And there's a UI feedback config as well if you want to apply them. I'm gonna apply them specifically to the pause menu and the dev screen so that the buttons have a sound. I will not apply this to the UI manager, right? So let's go to the sound. I think I'm not showing the UI screen right here, right? All right, so all of this stuff is just the default settings. I'll go to sounds, default UI feedback, assign this to the pause menu, and then click on add audio feedback events. This adds sounds to my buttons. Same thing for the dev screen. Click on the button here, and this assigns the sound to the respawn button. All right. Then what else? Oh yeah, one thing to note is that for both your dev screen and pause menu, right, be sure to set the timescale mode to nothing. All right. If not, what happens is that when the game is paused, then your screen will be paused as well. It will not be able to animate when it's paused. So because our pause screen will always only appear when the game is paused, you have to make sure the timescale mode is nothing, so the time continues to run for your pause menu even after you pause the game. Same thing for the dev screen, just to make sure that you don't hang the game. All right. So then once we have this and we have the dev screen assigned, we practically have everything set up properly for our canvas. Okay, the last thing we want to do is to add the game manager right here as well. We replace the game manager on the scene. Let me explain why this is the case. All right, so the reason why we have all of this is because the pause menu, right, has two buttons, the resume button and the quick main menu button. But you will see that in the prefab version of our components, the items are missing. The reason the item is missing is because the game manager is inside the scene itself. All right, and it is not possible. It's not possible for us to assign an object onto a prefab like this. So you'll see the resume uses game manager pause action over here. All right, but this can only be assigned in the scene itself, cannot be assigned in the prefab. All right, because they are in separate game objects on the scene. So for this to work, we have to make the game manager a part of the entire prefab right here. Otherwise, we will not be able to pre-assign the button actions, and we will basically, if we cannot pre-assign the button actions, then basically what we have to do is for every scene that we have, right, we will have to go and find the pause menu and assign the resume action and assign the quick main menu action and assign the dev screen action, which is of course very not ideal. So for that reason, right, we are adding the game manager onto the prefab like this, and of course you've got to assign the bench, sorry, not the bench, the shade. Shade is in the assets, shade object, as well as the pause menu object, which is all the way down here, right? And then you can just leave the rest as it is, like this. So it's important the game manager as part of the UI so that we can assign the default actions for our pause screen and our dev screen using the game manager here. So now see, I'm able to actually unpause the game like this. I can preset this and remove this. Same thing for the quit to main menu. Okay, the actions are missing because, again, well, it's on the scene, right? And we can't assign actions from the game manager. So game manager, respawn, sorry, this is quit to main menu, right? Quit to main menu will be, my bad, this will be UI screen, UI manager, and then load scene main menu. There we go. Scene is called main menu, right? let me just clean up the event trigger here as well. There's some stuff that shouldn't be there. And finally, for the respawn action, respawn right here. Depending on whether you pause the game when the character dies, you will either have to just do a game manager, respawn player, or if the game is paused, you have to first unpause the game first, which means you will have to go to game manager and then do an unpause as well. Just depends on how your game is set up. For me, I just have to do the respawn player right here. Alright, and that is all. So this should have set up all of my canvas options. So the other thing that we want to fix, right, also is that once all of this is set up, you will find that the game should work properly. Alright, if we didn't reassign the game manager, let me just remove the extra game manager. If we didn't reassign the extra game manager, right, when you hop up across the different scenes, you will find that some of the scenes, sometimes the pause or the dash screen doesn't work. I'm not sure if you run into this before, but if you run the project in the editor, sometimes you'll find the pause screen or the dash screen doesn't show up properly. And this is because the game manager is on a separate game object from the canvas. Alright, gonna go over to the cave 2 scene, and I'm gonna remove game manager as well because it's in the canvas, right? And I'll just make sure for each of the scenes, right, that my buttons have the correct actions assigned, because sometimes because the object itself in the scene is modified, so I have to make sure to revert it back to the original version. Same thing for cave 1. Let's go to the canvas, pause menu, and under resume, make sure to revert this to its original settings. Click the main menu, same thing. The function is missing because we have previously assigned a different object to it. Once we delete the game manager, we will have to make sure to revert this to the prefab version. Cave 3, same thing. Once we delete the game manager, we will be missing some actions. Again, the game manager is on canvas itself, right? So let's find the resume button. Make sure that everything is in place. Make sure to use the prefab version. Revert, and same, let's just remove this. And click the main menu here, make sure it's reverted. And dev screen, same thing, just check to make sure everything is in place. Once everything is in place, then you see your game should be working just great. And we just have one last problem that we have to deal with, and that is this. Okay, so the pause, everything works, right? Fantastic. The sounds don't work. Let me just fix that later. If I respawn, the respawn works now, but doesn't always work. The respawn here works because does it reload the scene? Let me see. Because in the version I tested out, the respawn didn't really work. Respawn. Load the bench. See. Okay, there we go. Set the respawn point. Save the Okay, so let's set out to fix a couple of issues with our game manager as well, that you may run into if you have issues with respawning. And it's right here. Okay, so there's an issue that we have with the default respawn point. In some of your projects, you may have a problem where if you do not set the default respawn point right here, then the player sometimes respawns under the scene. So to fix this issue, okay, we can make a couple of modifications to the game manager script. First is we will make the default respawn point public. I'll explain why this is later. So once that is done, we can actually, let's also actually change this value over here. All right. The reason we change this over here because this is a vector and vectors cannot be null. So this check actually never works. So if your code ever manages to get here, right, what's going to happen is that it will always go to the default respawn point. So in this case here, if you respawn and your default respawn point is set to 0, right, there may be a chance that you respawn under the scene. This has happened to me a couple of times. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply a fix to it. First is we will make sure that this piece of code is used if the bench exists. All right, so we will just check whether the bench position is not a 0 value. All right, so we are getting square magnitude because if the position is 0, 0, then square magnitude will be 0 itself. All right, so square magnitude only has a value if the position is a non-zero value. All right, so if the position is set, then we will set the respawn point to the bench value, bench position. Otherwise, we will set a default respawn point. So because the default respawn point is used if there is no other option for respawning, it's extremely important that for every one of our scenes, the default respawn point is actually set. So it's really dangerous here if your default respawn point is set to 0. So I'm just gonna make the change to the game manager right here, and we will also add a new editor script to our game manager just to make sure that our default respawn point is set. All right, so that this is again just multiple layers of safeguards to prevent bugs from happening in our game. All right, the worst thing you can have in your game is to have a bug that breaks the game. All right, so I'm gonna go into the singletons folder and again create a new editor folder right here, and inside here I will create a script called game manager editor like this. This is going to be much simpler than the UI screen editor because it is going to apply to the game manager. And what it does basically is it adds a new warning over here. If your respawn point is 0, there will be a warning that says respawn point is not set. This will break the dev script. Alright, so then just click on use player scene position. What this button does is it finds the player game object in the scene and it assigns the position of the player onto the game manager. So again, just a little fail-safe to prevent bugs from happening. Alright, so when you click on the button, you will see that for your scene, default respawn point is set. Okay, so just go to all your scenes and click on go to the game manager and click on use player scene position. Make sure that all the respawn points are checked, are set, and you should prevent the off case that there's no respawn point and the player spawns at 0, 0, which is not always within the map. Alright, so with all of these changes made, we should have a functioning game. So right now, if I move between the scenes and everything should work fine with the new system. And the camera is not set properly here. You just have to change the camera bounds a little bit later on. All in all, I'm glad that I managed to get everything here to work. Why is the UI not showing up? My UI is got UI manager, crossfade is 0, canvas group is 1. Right? Where's the UI? Okay, there we go. UI is there. Seems like UI goes missing after I change. See if I can fix that. UI is gone. UI is gone here because why is the canvas group alpha set to 0? This is odd. It's set to 0 when it shouldn't be. Is this the same game object that we have? Same thing, so it shouldn't be set to 0, right? Something is setting the alpha to 0. Gotta figure out what it is. Because if I go here, it fades out, and then when it comes in, the alpha is 0. Is the alpha 0 because it's deactivated? No, right? Something is turning off the alpha of my object. Check whether it's activated or not. Original alpha is 1. Seems like it's not active, huh? Is there any activate function inside any of these scripts that are running wrongly? Just go right here and just do a search. What is causing the alpha to go to 0? Yeah, all these little bugs over here, huh? Clear this and activate. Nope. Alpha. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have to go through all of the scripts and find out which is the thing that is causing the alpha to start from 0. This will be a little bit difficult, but I mean, what else can I do, right? We have to figure this out. And just comment out all the alpha equals to 0. Oh, it's this line right here. Activate fade to black. Why is the alpha equals to 0 here? There's a fade to. There's no need for the alpha equals to 0 to be here, right? To modify this, this part has so many bugs, man. I mean, in the creation process, like it's the hardest part that I've made. It's just a lot of little bugs that keep popping up. I hope that after this part we won't have a bug with the UI ever again. This should have fixed the issue. Fantastic. I'm not sure why I had this line in place. Doesn't make sense. Let's take this out. should have everything working properly now. I'll just test the whole thing just to make sure that all the bugs are fixed before we create the video. No more the UI issues here. And if I jump into the main menu, let's just check to make sure that the change doesn't affect the start button here. Okay, great. So let me modify the UI screen script as well. A lot of little errors in this part over here. Really annoying. UI screen, the load scene shouldn't have this alpha equals to 0 piece of code here. Fade to black. UI screen, second piece of code. Alpha equals to 0. There we go. So that should be all for this part. Let me just do one final check to make sure that everything is great. Okay, everything's working now. So the transitions from the scenes, fine. So that's all I have for part 12. I hope you enjoyed this part, and I hope that this has given you a glimpse of how the power of the Unity Inspector, right, is really awesome, because you can customize so many things inside. And I just realized one issue actually. So I'm gonna modify the script, so if you're the editor for this video, you don't have to include this in. But I just realized that if we were to go to our canvas, for example, right, if the alpha is 0, or let's say if I go to the main menu, the game is playing, right? Even when the game is playing, there will be warnings in the inspector, which we don't want the warning to appear in the game itself. So for example, if the game is running, it really doesn't matter whether we have alpha 0. You see that? So when I transition, if the alpha of an object is 0, you get this little warning over here, which is not ideal. And one way we can fix it is I have to go to check here. Actually, I forgot how to do it. I run a piece of script only when the editor is outside of application is play. So for the UI screen editor, for both of these, actually, right, let's add a application playing like this, right? So that the warnings, sorry, only when it's not playing. So the warnings only show up when we're not playing the game. It's pretty important. Otherwise, we'll get these annoying warnings, and if we're playing and somehow the alpha is 0, then we will get these warnings, which are not really relevant if the game is running fine. You know, so now the warnings don't show up when we're in game, only when we're outside the game and we set either one of these attributes to 0. Okay, so pretty important, I would say. And before I wrap it up, let's apply this change as well. UI screen. Application is playing. The application is not playing. Okay. And application, where is the application Okay. Yeah, and so that's all I have for this part. Really glad that everything is it's finally done. Gosh, this was a very difficult part to make. So just to just wanna also point it out that the UI has not been made responsive. Okay, so maybe we're not done. Okay, so just one last thing, right? Let me just very quickly make the UI responsive as well because I just realized that our UI elements are not responsive. So we've got to do something about that. Otherwise, see that? So let's fix those as well. Let's just jump into the canvas right here. And we will see, again, it's just a matter of splitting the anchor. So first is the heart's parent. Let me just, instead of having the hearts right here like this with fixed coordinates, I'm going to set this to 0 0.3 and 1 like this. Maybe 0 0.25 and 1. And then this will be 0 0.6. Just playing around with values and you get a good one. 7 and 9. Oh, 7 and 8. 8 and 9. 0 0.2. 0 0.22 and over here 0 0.95. Okay, so again, the whole process of making everything responsive is the same. We just set a value like this. Mana is anchored to the top left, but we have to also. Okay, let me. Where is this mana orb thing? So now the hearts are much better. It's kind of floating around, but at least it's a fixed place. So for the mana itself, right? Again, we want to set proper anchors for it. So 0 0.2. This will be 0 0.8 like this, or 0 0.7. So once the parent is set up like this properly, right, the next thing we will have to do is to make sure that the mana orb itself, right, is split as well. So I can just set it stretch like this and add some padding to control the size. And we want to, of course, do this for both the mana and the mana container. So again, we stretch everything to get everything right here. And again, we apply some padding get everything in the right place. So make sure that the preserve aspect is always checked, yeah, for the mana, because it's very important. Otherwise, the orbs will default. And if you want a little bit of margin on the top, then we will have to add a little bit more top padding like this. But 10, maybe 15 for all of them. So it's just a matter of again playing around the values to make sure that you get the right values. And we have the half mana container as well. So the half mana containers are all right here, right? So again, I'm just gonna do for the half mana container instead of just doing a split, right? Let me just adjust the mana 0.7. So the mana orbs are going to have to half mana container is going to have to. Let me just try adding a sprite here. Just get a sense of how this looks like. Half mana container. This will go to 1. And the half mana container is the Where are my orbs? Orbs are here. So the half mana container is just a stretch then. I just have to stretch it. But instead of having it 0 to 1, this would be 0.5 to 1, right? Or is it 0 to 0.5? Like this. So it takes up half. And then now we can set the margins. And it should be right in place, right? I don't know what the image here is for. Half mana. This is stretched with some margins at the side. This shouldn't be there. And if this is removed, then we have the half mana right here, right? Half mana is not really working. Is it working now? Mana there we go. So now it works. The line here, I think, is supposed to be all 0, right? I'm not sure what the line is for actually. Not sure what the line is for and why is it there. Let's anchor it to the top like this. And the width is going to be, instead of having a set width here, we can just set the width to be like, say, a ratio. 0.2 maybe, 0.19817. Yeah, so I'm just playing around with the values, and then because this will allow me to just fit the line right inside here. Like this, and with a height of say 10. And the mana orbs themselves, again, we'll have to, because again, the anchor is not split, right? So if you want to make everything responsive, then the anchors for everything must be split. So mana orbs, let's just turn them all on, and then we can get a sense of how it looks. Mana orbs are going to be along the left, like this. Stretching them vertically, it looks to work very well. Width, what's the width going to be? Width, let me just set the width to 0.5. Then we can zero everything out like this. And then left, now I can just play around with the portioning, or maybe I can just set 0.2 like this, or even 0.3. So again, the same process is just playing around with the values a little bit, you know. Same process as the main menu, otherwise. Getting all of this stuff to work. This is 0.8, 1, 0.2. And orbs themselves, the orbs themselves can be set to take up like different portions of. So what if this is 0 and 1 for all of them? The orbs should all just take up the entire box. So maybe 0. This is orb number 1, right? Orb number 1 will be 0 to 0.4. Be 0 to 0.3. Okay, maybe this is not set up as nicely as I thought it would be. Maybe 0.35. because the ops inside, they are not 0, 0.25, and 0 everything like this. Right, so we have the main op right here, and this is 0, this. So now we can set the op sizing for op number 1. The field itself can be stretched. There we go. So I just gotta get the anchors and everything done properly. It's 0.25. Yeah, maybe this is the one that works. Fill amount. It's too small. It's too small. Scale is set to 0. Right? Perhaps I will have to do a separate video for this. Op number 2 is going to be 0. This is just 0 and 1, same thing. Sorry, op number 2 is right here. The scale, I don't know why the scale is always played around with like that, you know. Because we shouldn't be modifying the scale of our elements at all, ideally. Set everything here to 1, this messes everything up here. 1. Mana container, perhaps without any. There we go. Mana container. Mana itself, it's right inside here. Scale is 1, right? Mana container, let's do 5, 5, 5, 5. Okay, so we have the mana orbs, and the fill is here. Looks great. So orb number 2, same thing. Maybe I'll just use the same attribute. So this would be 0.25 and 0.5 and 0 to 1. So I can 0 everything here. Orb number 2. But for orb number 2, if we make the size a bit smaller, that might make a bit of sense. So, or you know, we can just set the scale to like 0.9. That works as well. Or we can set like a right value here like this and make it go a little to the right and maybe a little from the bottom and top, make everything a bit smaller. And then for the fill, again, we stretch it to make it fit. And how did we do the fill for the first one? So just have a little bit of margin, right? Here's how it was done. And last one, the third orb, this would be 0.5, 0.75, then 0 to 1. So it fills up the entire area. And then here we have, again, just a even bigger margin, 10, 10. Maybe this shouldn't like have anything at the bottom. Top, this would be 20, 10. Right, it's 10. So here we're just playing around with the different values to kind of get the look that we want with the margins. Because once the anchor is split, you know, then everything actually works out great. And then again, same thing for the fill, we'll stretch it out. And we can set for the fill, just a little bit of a line here. And there we go. yeah, so it's a little bit of playing around with the settings a little bit for the mana stuff, but I think the UI should be much better now. We'll work on the mana stuff in a later part, because I want to rewrite the scripts for it as well. I'm not sure if I'm gonna include this in part 12 video. Yeah, you know what? Perhaps I should handle the UI for the mana and everything in part in the okay, let me record a new ending for this. So part 12 is done. For the next part, we're gonna fix the pickups, and I think because we have an error, we have an issue with the UI display. It's not responsive. So for that, in the next part, we're gonna deal with the pickups as well as the UI issues that we have right here. So the last 20 minutes of the stream or whatever, you can leave it out of the part 12 video. I'm talking to my editor, and yeah, don't forget to make the pause screen responsive as well. That's one more thing. It's already responsive somewhat, but just gotta reset the scale and just make sure the buttons have anchors that are split. So this is not as big of a deal because it works pretty well already. But if you want to go the extra mile, you can also just split the anchors for your buttons, and so that you know they all have a place that they kind of fall into. So for the resume button, for example, right, it should be 0.5 and 0.6 here. 5, 0.6. So you can also do this for the resume button. Oh, I'm doing it for the pause menu, right? It's the wrong screen. So I mean the resume button right here. Splitting anchor is always actually the best idea. So just make sure the pause menu is set, the scale is set to 1. Resume button over here is set to 0.4, 0.6 actually works pretty well. Zero, 0. So if resume here with a little bit of padding, then I quit the main menu. Let's make this a little wider. 3, 5, and 6, 5. Then we can zero everything up. A longer resume button and a longer main menu button. So again, this is just you know, if you want to make everything responsive, then this is a good idea. So this will be 0.4, 0.5 with a margin of 10 at the bottom. Yeah, so you can just add a little bit of responsiveness to your pause screen as well as your dev screen as well. Just split the anchor and then make sure that everything is positioned properly. Small thing, because these two menus are not as big of a problem, but it's never a bad thing to get everything working responsively always. One more thing is the text, right? It's gotta make the text also auto size right here and right here. Dev screen is, yeah, we definitely have to do something with dev screen text. So again, we split the anchor right here. So this will be 0.3, 0.7. And then we center it 0.4, 0.3, sorry, 0.5, 0.7. And then we can just dump everything like this. Always modifying the wrong thing. Modifying the dev screen itself. Modify the text. text is 0.3, 0.7. Okay, this works. 0.5, 0.7. Then we can get everything inside here, auto size. Then for the button will be 0.4 to 0.5 and 0.4 to 0.6 like this. Then we can again zero everything out, and then we have a bigger respawn button right here. So just some small edits to make everything responsive. Again, the original one is fine. It's just, you know, I thought that wherever you can make something responsive, it's always a good idea to do it, just in case, you know, you may have some edge case where you know, like your screen breaks, and if you split the anchor, then it's just a great way to make sure that the screen never breaks. You know, just minor optimizations. All right, so we still have one more UI issue, and that's with the health and the mana handler. So other than that, the dev screen and the pause menu should now be responsive. Just some minor tweaks to it to make sure it's responsive. And yeah, so that's it for this part. I hope you enjoyed it. I will update the project files on Patreon, and the next part we will deal with the UI pickups. So right now the UI pickups that we have, they work fine, but they can be improved by integrating them into our existing UI system, right? So once we do that, then we will be able to move on to the saving, which is next up. So the save system right now as well as a little finicky. So after we do the pickups, we fix the UI for the hearts and the mana, then we can move on to getting the save system actually working. So thank you for tuning in, and if you are watching, thank you for your support, and I'll see you all in the next stream. I'm sorry I haven't been interacting with the chat in this recording. This is because I want to focus on getting the recording done. So thank you so much. I'll see you all.